Commander Zextal stood in the main observation deck of the Axis Prime shipyards, his forearms crossed in what any species would recognize as profound skepticism. The holographic display floating before him showed technical specifications that made his secondary brain ache with confusion. In his 300 years of naval architecture, he had never seen anything quite so absurd. "This cannot be serious," he muttered, his reptilian snout twitching with irritation. His scales shifted from their usual deep green to a troubled yellow, a biological response he could not control when confronted with something that violated every principle he held dear. The human standing across from him remained perfectly calm. Chief Engineer Sarah Chen was small by galactic standards, barely reaching the middle of Zextal's chest. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple tie, and her brown eyes held a quiet confidence that the commander found deeply unsettling. She wore the standard gray uniform of the Terran coalition, unadorned except for a single badge that marked her as a master engineer. "I assure you, Commander, every calculation has been verified," Sarah said. Her voice was soft but steady. "The Prometheus Dawn is entirely feasible." Zextal gestured at the hologram with two of his arms, while the other two accessed his data tablet. "Feasible? You expect me to approve construction of a warship that violates fundamental physics? Look at this power core design. The energy output you claim would require a reactor 3 times this size. It is mathematically impossible." "With respect, Commander, it's mathematically improbable using standard Virillian equations," Sarah replied. She stepped closer to the hologram and manipulated it with practiced ease. "We've developed a new approach to plasma containment that increases efficiency by routing the magnetic fields through a crystalline matrix. The heat that normally represents waste energy is captured and redirected." A crystalline chime announced the arrival of Dr. Kivnis, the ethereal scientist assigned to oversee the project. The being resembled a collection of floating crystal shards arranged in a vaguely humanoid shape, pulsing with soft blue light. Kivnis had no mouth, but her thoughts projected directly into the minds of those nearby. "The human's mathematics are sound, Zextal," Kivnis communicated. "Unconventional, but sound. I have reviewed them myself." Zextal's scales rippled with frustration. "Sound mathematics that produce impossible results are still impossible, Doctor. And that is merely the power core. Look at the armor specifications." He expanded another section of the schematic. "This density should make the ship unable to move. The structural supports cannot possibly hold this weight distribution." Sarah touched her tablet, and a new set of calculations appeared. "We're using a composite armor system. The outer layer is a Terran steel alloy bonded at the molecular level with Caldrath ceramic plating and a proprietary organic binding compound. The result is stronger than either material alone, with significantly less weight." "Proprietary?" Zextal repeated, his voice dripping with suspicion. "Meaning you will not share the formula?" "Meaning it's classified under Terran military protocols," Sarah corrected gently. "But I can assure you it's been tested extensively. The binding compound is derived from protein structures found in Earth arachnids, spider silk scaled up and modified." "Spider silk?" Zextal said flatly. "You are building a warship with insect excretions. Arachnid secretions, technically. And yes," Sarah's expression did not change. "Nature solved the problem of creating incredibly strong, flexible materials millions of years before we reached space. We simply learned from it." Kivnis pulsed with what might have been amusement. "I find the human approach refreshing. While we calculate what should work according to established theory, they test what does work in reality." Zextal wanted to argue, but the Treaty of Shared Construction was clear. Any member species of the Galactic Council had the right to requisition shipyard time and materials, provided they could pay the costs. The Terran Coalition had paid in full 3 months in advance. His personal feelings about the absurdity of their design were irrelevant. "What about the weapon systems?" he asked, pulling up another section of the blueprint. "These rail cannons require a capacitor discharge that would fry every circuit in a standard targeting computer. How do you propose to fire them without destroying your own systems?" "We're using organic computing substrates for the targeting systems," Sarah explained. "Neural networks grown from modified Earth neurons. They can process information faster than quantum computers for certain calculations, and they're naturally resistant to electromagnetic interference. You are building a ship out of spider webs and brain tissue, Zextal said, his voice rising. This is not engineering. This is madness. It's biology and engineering combined, Sarah replied, still infuriatingly calm. Humanity has always used multiple disciplines together. We don't see them as separate as most species do. Behind them, other aliens had gathered to watch the discussion. Word had spread through the shipyards about the crazy human design, and engineers from a dozen species had come to witness what they expected to be a spectacular denial. A Kaldrath technician, his rocky hide scarred from years of work, clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his people. The little human thinks she can teach the great Zextal about shipbuilding, he called out. This will be entertaining. Sarah glanced at the crowd but did not rise to the bait. I'm not here to teach anyone. I'm here to build a ship according to specifications approved by my government and paid for with legitimate credits. Commander Zextal, do you have grounds to deny our requisition? Zextal felt trapped. Every instinct screamed at him to reject this nonsense, to save these humans from their own hubris. The ship they described could not work. It violated too many principles, ignored too many established limitations. When it failed, as it surely would, people would die. Human crew members who trusted in these impossible specifications would perish in the void. But the treaty was clear. He had no grounds for denial, unless he could prove the design was intentionally fraudulent, or that construction would endanger the shipyard itself. He could prove neither. How long do you estimate construction will take? He asked, stalling for time. 14 weeks, Sarah replied immediately. We have our construction crews ready to begin as soon as you release the bay and materials. 14 weeks? Zextal repeated. For a capital ship of this size, standard construction time is 9 months minimum. Human construction teams work differently, Sarah said. We've developed modular assembly techniques that significantly reduce build time. Kivnis chimed in again. I have observed human construction methods on their colony worlds. They are remarkably efficient, if somewhat chaotic by our standards. Zextal made a decision he would question for months to come. He pulled up the authorization form on his tablet and began filling in the necessary fields. I am approving this requisition under formal protest, he announced. I am also assigning myself as direct oversight supervisor. Every stage of construction will be documented and reviewed. When this design fails, the record will show that the Terran coalition was warned. That's acceptable, Sarah said, bowing her head slightly in what he recognized as a human gesture of respect. We welcome oversight, Commander. Transparency builds trust. Trust? Zextal muttered as he pressed his 4 thumbprints onto the authorization screen. I am trusting that your escape pods are well designed, at least. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Actually, we've made some improvements to the standard escape pod design as well. I'd be happy to show you those specifications. No, Zextal said quickly. One impossible human project at a time is sufficient. The authorization went through, and the hologram updated to show Bay 7 being reassigned to the Terran coalition. Sarah pulled out her communicator and spoke briefly in her native language. Within minutes, human workers began arriving at the observation deck, carrying equipment and rolling supply containers. They moved with purpose and efficiency, each seeming to know exactly where they needed to be. Zextal watched them with a mixture of fascination and dread. They were so small compared to most species, yet they moved heavy equipment with mechanical assists that seemed cobbled together from mismatched parts. One group was using what appeared to be a cargo lifter, modified with parts from a mining drill and a food preparation unit. It should not work, yet it lifted a 3-ton steel beam as smoothly as any standard lifter. Your equipment is very improvised, he observed. Adaptable, Sarah corrected. When you're a species that only reached the stars recently, you learn to make do with what you have. We get creative. Creative? Zextal said, filing the word away. He was beginning to suspect that human creativity was going to give him many sleepless cycles. Dr. Kivnis floated closer to the viewing window, her crystalline structure refracting the lights from the construction bay below. This will be fascinating to observe. I predict we will learn much from the humans, regardless of whether their ship succeeds or fails. It will fail, Zextal said. but even he could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. Below them, Sarah Chen had joined her crew. She was speaking with a large man who appeared to be the construction foreman, pointing at different sections of the bay and sketching diagrams on a portable screen. The crew was already beginning to set up the massive fabrication units that would forge the ship's frame. A Varillian engineer approached Zextal, a younger male named Rixval who served as the shipyard's structural specialist. "Commander, I've been reviewing the human specifications. The gravity drive design in particular concerns me. The power-to-thrust calculations suggest it will tear itself apart on first activation." "I know," Zextal said heavily. "I have the same concerns about every system on that vessel, but our hands are bound by the treaty." "Perhaps," Rixval said slowly, "perhaps when it fails, it will teach the humans some humility. They are so new to the galactic community. They do not understand the lessons we have learned over millennia." Zextal watched Sarah Chen directing her crew with confident gestures. "I am not certain the humans are interested in learning the lessons we think we should teach them, Rixval. I suspect they intend to write their own lessons." "Then they will write them in failure," Rixval replied. "Perhaps," Zextal agreed. But a small part of him, the part that had once been a young engineer excited by new possibilities before centuries of experience had taught him the limits of what was achievable, wondered if perhaps the humans saw something everyone else had missed. It was a foolish thought, he told himself. Experience and established science were not things to be dismissed by newcomers with radical ideas. Yet as he watched the humans work through the night cycle, never seeming to tire, their improvised equipment performing tasks it had no business being able to accomplish, Zextal felt something he had not experienced in decades. It was not quite hope and not quite fear. It was possibility. That dangerous sensation that perhaps the universe still had surprises left to reveal. He shook his head, his scales shifting back to their normal green. No, the ship would fail. Physics did not care about human confidence or determination. The Prometheus dawn would be a valuable lesson in why established principles existed. Zextal settled in for what he expected to be a long 14 weeks of watching humans learn the hard way, that impossible meant impossible. Week 2 of construction, and Commander Zextal found himself spending more time in the observation deck than he had planned. What had started as supervisory obligation had become something closer to obsession. He could not look away from the humans and their impossible project. The frame of the Prometheus dawn had taken shape faster than should have been possible. Standard construction protocols required careful assembly of prefabricated sections, each joint inspected and certified before the next piece could be attached. The humans had thrown that entire process into chaos. They welded, actually welded, with arc torches and plasma cutters joining sections of different alloys that every engineering manual said were incompatible. The molecular structures were too different. The thermal expansion rates mismatched. The joints should have been weak points, places where the ship would crack under stress. Instead, the welds were stronger than the surrounding metal. Zextal had personally taken samples to the shipyard laboratory. The metallurgist, a Kaldrath named Vorash with 200 years of experience, had examined them for 3 days, before admitting he had no explanation. "The bond should not exist," Vorash had said, clicking his mandibles in confusion. "Yet it does. It is as if the metals want to join together." "Metals do not want anything," Zextal had replied. "They follow physical laws." "Then perhaps," Vorash had suggested carefully, "the humans know physical laws we do not." The thought had haunted Zextal ever since. He watched now as Sarah Chen stood on a work platform 50 meters above the construction bay floor, directing 2 human welders who were joining a support beam to the main hull. The beam was made of Varillian combat-grade titanium. The hull was constructed from Kaldrath ceramic composite. The materials came from different worlds, developed by different species with different understanding of material science. The welders finished their work, and Sarah ran a handheld scanner along the joint. She nodded satisfied and marked something on her tablet. Below, a massive section of the ship's inner skeleton was being maneuvered into position by 4 floating drones. The drones were human-made, cobbled together from mining equipment and cargo lifters. Their improvised nature obvious to anyone who looked closely. They worked perfectly. Rixval, the young Varillian engineer, stood beside Zextal, with his data tablet displaying constant streams of readings. Commander, the structural integrity of the frame exceeds specifications by 42%. According to our measurements, the ship is actually stronger than the humans designed it to be. How is that possible? Zextal asked, already knowing he would not like the answer. I do not know, Rixval admitted, but I have a hypothesis. The humans are not following our joining techniques. They heat the materials to specific temperatures that our protocols warn against. Those temperatures should damage the molecular structure. Instead, they seem to be creating a transitional zone where the different materials merge more completely. You are suggesting they discovered something new about material science by ignoring safety protocols, Zextal said flatly. I am suggesting they discovered it by testing what works rather than following what should work, Rixval replied. Commander, I have been watching them for 2 weeks. They try things constantly. They modify and adjust and experiment. When something fails, they analyze why and try differently. They do not seem to have the fear of failure that we do. Zextal considered this. In Virillian culture, failure was shameful. An engineer who proposed a design that did not work would lose standing, perhaps even their position. It made everyone careful, conservative. Designs were checked and rechecked before anything was built. Innovation came slowly, carefully. The humans apparently did not share this cultural trait. A commotion near the power core assembly area drew Zextal's attention. A group of human engineers were gathered around what appeared to be an argument. Voices were raised, hands gesturing emphatically. He activated the directional audio sensors to listen in. The alignment is off by 3 degrees, a tall human woman was saying. That's going to cause harmonic vibration when we bring the reactor online. 3 degrees is within tolerance, a shorter man replied, his arms crossed. Specs say 5 degrees is acceptable. Specs are minimum standards, Martinez. The woman shot back. You want to fly on a ship that's built to minimum standards? Sarah Chen appeared from behind a support strut, apparently having heard the discussion. What's the problem? Chen asked calmly. The tall woman whose name badge read Williams pointed at the reactor housing. 3rd mounting bracket is off by 3 degrees. Martinez says it's within specs. I say if we're building something impossible, we should build it better than possible. Sarah pulled out a scanner and checked the measurements herself. She was quiet for a long moment, and Zextal found himself leaning forward, curious about how she would handle the disagreement. Williams is right, Sarah finally said. We're not building to minimum standards. We're building to prove a point. Realign it. It will take what? 2 hours? About that, Martinez admitted, his expression sheepish. Sorry, Chief. You're right. No apology needed, Sarah said. You were right that it met specs. Williams is right that we should exceed them. Both views are valid. Now let's get it done. The group dispersed without further argument, already pulling out tools to make the adjustment. Zextal found the interaction fascinating. In a Virillian crew, such a disagreement would have been handled through formal channels with reports filed, and supervisors making official decisions. The humans simply discussed it, made a choice, and moved on. Dr. Kivnis materialized beside him, her crystalline form chiming softly. You have been watching for 6 hours without pause. Commander, someone must ensure they do not endanger the shipyard. Zextal replied, though they both knew it was an excuse. Of course, Kivnis said, and he could sense her amusement. I have been reviewing the power system they are installing. It is remarkable. Remarkably likely to explode, Zextal muttered. No, remarkably elegant, Kivnis corrected. They are using a triple redundant design, but not in the way we understand redundancy. Each power core is different. One is plasma-based, one uses antimatter containment, and one is a hybrid fusion system. If any one system fails, the others compensate. But here is the fascinating part. When all 3 operate simultaneously, they create a harmonic resonance that increases the total output beyond the sum of the parts. Zextal turned to stare at the ethereal scientist. That should be impossible. Energy does not multiply itself. Energy does not, Kivnis agreed. But efficiency can be increased through resonance. It is a principle we use in certain quantum applications, but never in power generation at this scale. The humans apparently tested it and found it worked. They tested it. Zextal repeated. They built 3 different types of power cores and tested whether they would accidentally create a beneficial resonance effect. According to engineer Chen, they tested 17 different combinations. Kivnis said. This was the most effective. The other 16 are documented in their research files. They did not view the failed attempts as failures, but as data points. Zextal felt his world tilting slightly. They built 16 experimental power systems just to find one that worked better? Yes, they call it iteration. Rapid prototyping and testing. Very human. Before Zextal could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the shipyard. Red emergency lights pulsed in the construction bay. His communicator erupted with urgent messages. Coolant failure in Bay 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. Zextal's blood chilled. A coolant failure in a construction bay where active welding and plasma cutting was happening could be catastrophic. The temperatures in the work areas would spike within minutes. Equipment would fail. The partially constructed ship could be damaged beyond repair. Worse, people could die. He ran for the bay access, Rixval close behind him. Dr. Kivnis simply teleported directly to the bay floor in a flash of crystalline light. When Zextal reached the bay, he expected to find chaos. Instead, he found organized activity. The humans were not evacuating. They were working. Sarah Chen stood at a control panel barking orders into her communicator. Reroute the secondary coolant from Bay 6. Martinez, get those cargo bay refrigeration units online now. Williams, I need temperature readings every 30 seconds. Chief, the regulations say evacuate, someone called out. The regulations don't account for the fact that we have 50 tons of superheated metal that will warp if it cools too quickly, Sarah replied without looking up. We can fix this, but we have to do it now. Everyone without a specific task evacuate to safe distance. Everyone else, you know what to do. Zextal grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her around to face him. You will get your people killed. Evacuate now. Sarah met his eyes, and he was startled by the calm determination he saw there. Commander, I appreciate your concern, but I know my crew, and I know this ship. We can handle this. Trust us. Trust you? Zextal sputtered. You are improvising a solution to a critical systems failure. Yes, Sarah said simply. That's what we do. She turned back to her work. Martinez, status on those refrigeration units? Online in 60 seconds, Chief. We're routing the coolant through non-standard pipes, but it should work. Should? Zextal said weakly. Will, Martinez corrected from across the bay, flashing a grin. Sorry. Should definitely means will in human engineering speak. Zextal watched in horrified fascination as the humans connected cargo bay refrigeration systems designed to keep food fresh to the industrial coolant systems of a starship construction bay. They were using flexible atmosphere ducting as improvised coolant pipes. They were monitoring temperatures with handheld sensors meant for checking food storage. It should not work. The temperature readings on the main display began to drop. Slowly at first, then more steadily. The red warning lights shifted to yellow, then to green. The entire crisis took 12 minutes from start to resolution. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead and allowed herself a small smile. Good work, everyone. Martinez, excellent thinking on the refrigeration units. Make a note. That actually works better than the standard coolant system. Lower energy consumption, faster response time. You are insane, Zextal said quietly. All of you. Completely insane. Probably, Sarah agreed cheerfully. But the ship is safe, everyone is safe, and we're back on schedule. I'd call that a win. Dr. Kivnis floated over to them, her crystalline structure pulsing with excited energy. That was extraordinary. You solved a critical failure using cargo equipment and improvisation. Have you documented the solution? Recording everything, Williams called out, holding up a camera. Standard procedure. Every modification, every improvisation, every success, and every failure. We learn from all of it. Zextal looked at the jury-rigged coolant system, at the humans already returning to their work, at the partially constructed ship that should not exist, and yet was taking shape before his eyes. Something fundamental in his understanding of engineering was shifting. Why did you not simply evacuate and return after proper repairs were made? He asked Sarah. Because proper repairs would take 3 days, Sarah replied. And because in those 3 days, the frame we've built would have cooled unevenly, causing microfractures that would weaken the structure. We would have had to start over. Better to solve the problem now with what we have, than to solve it later with what we wish we had. That philosophy seems to define human engineering, Zexthal observed. Pretty much, Sarah agreed. We're very good at working with what we have. Comes from spending most of our existence on one planet with limited resources. You learn to be creative, or you don't survive. Rixval had been examining the improvised coolant system, taking readings and making notes. Commander, he called out, you should see this. The human solution is actually 40% more efficient than our standard system. It uses less energy and provides more even temperature distribution. Of course it does, Zexthal said tiredly. He felt as though the universe was playing an elaborate joke on him. Is there anything the humans touch that does not somehow work better than it should? Sarah grinned at him, and for the first time Zexthal found himself almost smiling back. Commander, I think you're starting to understand the Terran approach to engineering. I understand that you terrify me, Zexthal replied honestly. That's a start, Sarah said. The proving grounds of Axis Prime orbited the planet's largest moon, a barren rock marked with craters from centuries of weapons testing. Ships from across the galaxy came here to demonstrate their capabilities, to show the military observers from 47 species what new technologies they had developed. It was theater as much as science, a place where pride and politics mixed with particle beams and plasma fire. Commander Zexthal stood in the observation gallery, with what felt like half the galaxy watching beside him. The gallery was packed with military officials, engineers, scientists, and journalists. Everyone wanted to see the human ship. Word had spread through the shipyards and beyond about the impossible vessel the Terrans had constructed. Some came to witness a triumph. Most came to watch a failure. The Prometheus Dawn hung in space 3 kilometers from the observation platform, and even Zexthal had to admit it was beautiful. The ship was sleek where most warships were blocky, curved where others were angular. The armor that should have been too heavy gleamed like polished obsidian. The weapons arrays that should have melted their own mounting points sat cleanly along the hull. Every impossible feature they had incorporated showed in the final design. She looks fast, Rixval observed beside him. The young Virillian had become something of a convert over the 14 weeks of construction, documenting every human innovation with the enthusiasm of a student discovering new worlds. Fast is irrelevant if it cannot survive combat, grumbled General Krathok, a massive Kaldrath officer whose rocky hide bore scars from 3 wars. Pretty ships die just as easily as ugly ones. Sarah Chen stood at the control panel, running through final system checks with her crew. She had barely slept in the last 3 days, Zexthal knew, overseeing the final installations and running simulation after simulation. Now she looked tired but determined, her hair pulled back in its usual simple tie, her fingers moving confidently across the holographic controls. All stations report ready, she announced. Weapon systems are powered but locked. Shields are on standby. We're ready to begin the demonstration. A Virillian admiral named Thexival, one of the highest-ranking military officials present, activated his communicator. Chief Engineer Chen, you may begin with basic maneuvers. Show us your ship can move as designed. Acknowledged, Admiral, Sarah replied. She nodded to her pilot, a young human man named Jackson who sat in the central command chair. Jackson, take us through the basic pattern. The Prometheus Dawn's engines flared to life, burning with a bright blue light that was somehow different from standard ion drives. The ship began to move, and Zexthal heard gasps from the crowd. It accelerated faster than any ship its size should be able to move. It turned banking in a way that should have torn the frame apart from the stress. It stopped going from full speed to 0 in seconds, that should have turned the crew into paste against the forward bulkheads. Impossible, Krathok breathed. The G-forces alone should kill everyone aboard. Inertial dampeners at 160% normal effectiveness, Rixval read from his scanner. They have improved the standard dampening technology somehow. Dr. Kivnas chimed softly beside Zexthal. They ran the dampening field through the same type of organic computing substrate they use for targeting. The system adjusts in real time to velocity changes, predicting and compensating before the stress hits the crew. They put brains in their inertial dampeners, Zexthal said, shaking his head. Why am I not surprised? The demonstration continued. The Prometheus Dawn wove through an asteroid field that had been towed into position for the test, moving between rocks, with grace that seemed more like a dancer than a warship. Standard naval doctrine said ships this size required at least 3 seconds to adjust course. The Prometheus Dawn reacted in less than 1. Weapons test is next, Admiral Thexival announced. Targets are authorized. You may fire when ready, Chief Engineer. Sarah's voice came through the speakers, calm as ever. Weapons online. Targeting solution locked. Firing rail cannons. The ship's forward cannons fired, and Zexthal's sensors went crazy. The projectiles moved so fast that for a moment, his equipment registered them as sensor glitches. The target drones, military grade with full evasion capabilities, did not even attempt to dodge. They could not. The rounds hit them before their systems could register the threat. 6 drones destroyed in 2 seconds. Check those readings, Krathok demanded of his aide. Those velocities cannot be correct. They are correct, General, the aide replied, his voice shaky. The rounds are traveling at 0.03% light speed. That is 3 times faster than any known rail cannon. How? Thexful demanded, leaning forward in his seat. The power requirements alone should be impossible, Sarah's voice answered through the still open channel. We're using capacitors made from layered graphene and a carbon allotrope we developed specifically for this application. They can store and discharge energy much faster than conventional systems. The targeting is handled by our organic computing substrates, which can calculate firing solutions in microseconds. Organic computing? Krathok repeated. You mean biological computers? Modified neural tissue, yes, Sarah confirmed. Grown specifically for this purpose, not harvested. Very fast, very efficient, and naturally resistant to electromagnetic interference. Murmurs ran through the observation gallery. Using biological components in weapons systems was not unheard of, but most species found it distasteful. Machines should be machines, went the common wisdom. Mixing biology and technology too deeply was uncomfortable. The humans apparently did not share that discomfort. Energy weapons next, Sarah announced, activating plasma projectors. The Prometheus Dawn's energy weapons glowed with gathered power. When they fired, the beams were not the dispersed streams typical of plasma weapons. They were tight, focused, almost solid-looking columns of superheated matter. They carved through the target drones like cutting tools through soft metal. Those should disperse, Zextal murmured. Plasma cannot maintain coherence over that distance. We're using a magnetic containment field that travels with the plasma, Sarah explained, somehow hearing his comment. It collapses on impact, releasing all the energy at once. Think of it as a shaped charge, but with plasma instead of explosives. Rixfall was frantically taking notes. That is brilliant. Why has no one else thought of that? Because everyone else calculates what should work according to established physics, Dr. Kivnis answered. The humans test what does work, regardless of what established physics says should be impossible. The shield test came next. A row of automated weapons platforms opened fire on the Prometheus Dawn, using everything from kinetic rounds to energy weapons to missile volleys. The ship's shields flared with each impact, glowing in brilliant cascades of color. They held, more than held. The shields seemed to strengthen with each hit, glowing brighter, deflecting more effectively. What are we seeing? Admiral Thexful demanded. Those shields should be weakening under sustained fire. Adaptive shielding, Sarah replied. The shield generators analyze incoming fire and adjust the field density and frequency to better deflect specific threats. The more you shoot at them, the better they get at stopping it. That should require processing power beyond anything portable. Krathok objected. It does, Sarah agreed. That's why we use organic computing substrates for the shield management as well. They can handle millions of calculations simultaneously without the heat buildup you get from quantum computers. Zextal noticed something else on his scanner. The shields are not drawing more power as they strengthen. How is that possible? We're redirecting the kinetic and thermal energy from the impacts, Sarah explained. The shields absorb the damage and convert it to power that reinforces the field. The harder you hit us, the stronger we get. A stunned silence fell over the observation gallery. That was not just impressive. That was revolutionary. Shield technology across the galaxy might need to be completely redesigned if this approach worked consistently. The armor test, Admiral Thexful said, his voice carefully neutral. Fire the heavy weapons at the Prometheus Dawn. Let us see if this miraculous armor is as good as claimed. Warning klaxons sounded as the Proving Ground's heaviest weapons came online. These were ship-killer weapons, designed to test armor by overwhelming it with raw destructive force. The kind of weapons that could vaporize standard cruisers. The Prometheus Dawn dropped its shields. "Chief Engineer, your shields are down," Thexful said urgently. "Raise them immediately." "Testing the armor, Admiral," Sarah replied calmly. "Can't do that with shields up. My crew is secure. Fire when ready." Zextal felt his hearts racing. This was madness. Even if the armor was as good as the humans claimed, taking fire from those weapons without shields was suicide. The weapons fired. Plasma beams, particle lances, and kinetic slugs, the size of small vehicles, converged on the Prometheus Dawn. The impacts were tremendous, visible even through the observation gallery's filtered windows. The ship disappeared in a ball of fire and energy. When the smoke cleared, the Prometheus Dawn was still there. Scorched, yes. The armor showed impact marks, areas where the surface had been damaged, but the hull was intact. Not breached, not weakened, not compromised, intact. "Damage report," Sarah's voice came through, steady as ever. "Outer armor ablated in 7 locations. Inner armor showing no damage. Hull integrity at 96%. All systems functioning normally. We're good for another dozen volleys if you want to keep testing." No one spoke. Zextal stared at the ship, at the impossible armor that had just survived fire that should have destroyed it utterly. He heard Rixfall whisper something in their native language, a prayer to old gods that few Varelians still believed in. Dr. Kivnis was pulsing with rapid, excited energy. "Magnificent, absolutely magnificent. That armor composition," Krathok said, his voice rough. "You said it was classified?" "It is," Sarah confirmed. "But I can tell you the general principle. We layered different materials with different properties, bonded at the molecular level with organic compounds. When energy hits it, the outer layers ablate and dissipate heat, while the inner layers maintain structural integrity. It's similar to how ancient Earth spacecraft used heat shields for atmospheric re-entry. You built a warship using re-entry shield technology," Zextal said. "We adapted it, yes," Sarah replied. "Why develop something new when you can modify something that already works?" Alarms suddenly blared through the observation gallery. A different alarm, one that meant real danger, not testing protocols. Unidentified vessels entering the Proving Ground. A controller shouted. "Multiple contacts. Hostile configuration." The holographic display updated to show 8 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They were raiders, Zextal saw immediately. Miscellaneous ships welded together from stolen parts, bristling with illegal weapons. Pirates, who had somehow learned about the test and decided to attack while the galaxy's military forces were watching. Bold, stupid, but bold. "Prometheus Dawn is not combat ready." Admiral Thexful snapped into his communicator. "Return to dock immediately." "Negative, Admiral." Sarah's voice came back. "We have hostiles engaging the observation platform. Civilian vessels are present. We're moving to intercept." "That is an order, Chief Engineer." "With respect, Admiral, those pirates are firing on unarmed civilians. We're the only armed ship in range. We're engaging." The Prometheus Dawn accelerated toward the pirate ships, moving faster than Zextal had seen any warship move outside of theoretical simulations. The pirates, apparently surprised that their target was charging them instead of fleeing, scattered. It did not help them. "This is going to be interesting," Sarah's voice said, and Zextal thought he heard anticipation in her tone. "Jackson Combat Pattern Delta, weapons free." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Zextal knew, because he watched the chronometer the entire time, unable to look away from the display showing the Prometheus Dawn moving through the pirate fleet like death itself had taken physical form. The first pirate ship died before it could fully orient its weapons. The Prometheus Dawn's rail cannons fired, the projectiles moving too fast for point defense systems to track. The pirate vessel simply came apart. its hull punctured in 6 places simultaneously, atmosphere and debris venting into space. The second ship managed to fire back. Plasma bolts and missile volleys converged on the human warship. The Prometheus Dawn did not even bother raising shields. It simply moved, twisting through space, in maneuvers that should have been impossible for something its size. Every shot missed, not by much, but in combat, close meant nothing. The third and fourth ships died together, caught in a crossfire as the Prometheus Dawn positioned itself perfectly between them. Rail cannons took one, while plasma projectors carved through the other. The magnetic containment field Sarah had described worked exactly as advertised, the plasma staying coherent until impact, and then releasing all its energy at once. The fourth ship's reactor detonated, adding its own destructive force to the engagement. "They are hurting them," Rixfall said, his voice filled with awe. "Look at the positioning. The Prometheus Dawn is controlling where the pirates can move." He was right. The human ship was not just reacting to the pirates. It was predicting their movements, cutting off escape routes, forcing them into positions where they had no good options. It was like watching a predator hunt, all instinct and perfect timing. The fifth ship tried to run, engaging its faster-than-light drive. The Prometheus Dawn fired a weapon Zextal did not even know it had, some kind of electromagnetic pulse that rippled through space and disabled the pirate's drive before it could activate. The ship drifted helpless, and Jackson put a rail cannon round through its engines. Not destroyed, just crippled, disabled for later capture. "They are leaving survivors," General Krathok observed. "Interesting. Humans prefer to capture when possible," Dr. Kivnis explained. "They value intelligence gathering. Dead pirates tell no tales, as they say." Ships 6 and 7 came at the Prometheus Dawn together, trying to overwhelm it with concentrated fire. It was a sound tactic, one that might have worked against a standard warship. Against the Prometheus Dawn, it was suicide. The human ship spun a full 360-degree rotation that brought all its weapons to bear in sequence. The pirates flew into a wall of fire, rail cannons, plasma projectors, and what appeared to be some kind of flechette launcher, all fired within the same 2-second window. Both ships were reduced to drifting hulks. The 8th pirate ship did the smart thing. It tried to surrender, broadcasting ceasefire signals and powering down its weapons. "Prometheus Dawn, this is Admiral Thexval. Accept their surrender and hold position." "Acknowledged, Admiral," Sarah replied. "Jackson, keep weapons locked on them. If they so much as twitch wrong, disable their engines." "Got it, Chief," Jackson replied, his voice steady, despite having just fought his first real space combat. "Not going to lie, that was intense." "You did good," Sarah said, and Zextal heard genuine pride in her voice. "The whole crew did good. Now, let's get these ships secured and make sure no one got hurt on the observation platform." The observation gallery erupted in conversation. Military officials were shouting into communicators, demanding reports and analysis. Engineers were reviewing the combat footage, replaying specific moments over and over. Journalists were frantically recording, knowing they had just witnessed something that would reshape galactic politics. Zextal simply sat down, his forearms hanging limp. He felt as though his entire understanding of naval warfare had just been torn apart and rebuilt in 4 minutes. "Commander," Rixval's voice was concerned. "Are you all right?" "No," Zextal admitted. "No, I do not think I am all right. I think I have just watched the future of warfare, and I'm not certain how I feel about it." Dr. Kivnis floated down to his level, her crystalline form pulsing with a gentle, calming light. "You feel obsolete," she said simply. "Your training, your experience, your understanding of how ships should fight. All of it was challenged in less than 5 minutes." "Yes," Zextal said. "That is exactly how I feel." "Good," Kivnis replied. "That means you are learning. Growth requires the acceptance of obsolescence. We must let go of old truths to make room for new ones." General Krathok approached them, his heavy footsteps making the deck plates vibrate. His rocky face was unreadable, but his voice held a tone Zextal recognized as grudging respect. "Commander Zextal, you supervised the construction of that vessel." "I did," Zextal confirmed, though supervised may be too strong a word. "Mostly, I documented what the humans did and tried not to have a crisis every time they violated fundamental engineering principles. And yet it works, Krathok said. Better than works. That ship just defeated 8 hostiles without taking a single hit, without even raising shields. The armor we spent 2 hours testing never even came into play because they were too fast to be hit. The humans have a saying, Dr. Kivness offered. The best armor is not being where the bullets are. They prioritize mobility and precision over raw defensive capability. Admiral Thexfall joined their group, his scales showing the silver tint of deep thought. We need to discuss what we just witnessed. That combat performance changes everything. If the humans can build ships like this, the entire balance of galactic power shifts. One ship does not shift the balance of power, Krathok objected. One ship should not be able to do what we just watched, Thexfall countered. But it did, which means either the humans got impossibly lucky, or they have developed technologies and tactics that render our current military doctrines obsolete. I know which option I am betting on. Zextal stood, his legs feeling steadier. Admiral, with your permission, I would like to request a full briefing from Chief Engineer Chen. I want to understand how they achieved these results. Not just the technical specifications, but the thinking behind them. Permission granted, Thexfall said. In fact, I am ordering it. I want a full report on human engineering philosophy and methods. If we are going to work alongside them, we need to understand how they think. 2 hours later, Zextal found himself in a briefing room with Sarah Chen, Admiral Thexfall, General Krathok, Dr. Kivness, and representatives from a dozen other species. The room was packed, everyone wanting to understand what they had witnessed. Sarah stood at the front of the room, a holographic display behind her showing various technical schematics. She looked tired but energized, the way people do when they have proven something they believed in against all opposition. Thank you all for coming, she began. I know you have questions. I will try to answer them as best I can within security limitations. Admiral Thexfall has approved me to share general principles, though specific technical details remain classified. Start with the basics, Thexfall instructed. How did you develop technologies that violate what we thought were physical limitations? Sarah smiled slightly. That's the thing, Admiral. We did not violate physical limitations. We challenged assumptions about what those limitations were. She pulled up a schematic of the power core system. Take the power systems, for example. Everyone told us you could not create harmonic resonance between different reactor types, but that belief was based on the assumption that the reactors would interfere with each other destructively. We tested it and found that with proper timing and field modulation, they actually reinforce each other constructively. We did not break physics. We just tested whether the commonly accepted interpretation of physics was complete. You risked catastrophic failure on the possibility that centuries of accepted science might be incomplete? Krathok asked, his tone somewhere between horrified and impressed. We risked it on small-scale tests first, Sarah corrected. We built miniature versions, tested them in controlled environments, analyzed the results, and scaled up only when we were confident. 17 different combinations failed before we found one that worked. We learned from each failure. Zextal raised one of his hands. But that approach requires accepting failure as part of the process. In Viridian engineering culture, failure is shameful. It damages careers. How do humans overcome that cultural barrier? Sarah considered the question carefully. In human culture, failure to try is worse than trying and failing. We have a saying, you miss 100% of the shots you do not take. Failure teaches us what does not work, which is valuable information. Thomas Edison, one of Earth's great inventors, said he did not fail to create the light bulb 1,000 times. He successfully found 1,000 ways that did not work. So, human engineering is built on acceptance of failure, Dr. Kivness observed. Human engineering is built on iteration, Sarah corrected. We try, we test, we learn, we try again. Each attempt informs the next. It is not about accepting failure. It is about refusing to let failure stop us. She pulled up another schematic, this one showing the weapon systems. The rail cannons work because we did not accept that the firing velocity had an upper limit based on capacitor discharge rates. We developed new capacitor technology, tested it, found it worked, and implemented it. The plasma weapons work because we did not accept that plasma had to disperse over distance. We developed containment fields that travel with the plasma. tested them, refined them, and implemented, Thexval asked. Using biological components in weapon systems makes many species uncomfortable. I understand that, Sarah acknowledged. But humans have always seen biology and technology as complementary rather than separate. Our brains are biological computers that outperform quantum systems in many tasks. Why not learn from that? The neural substrates we grow are not sentient. They are specialized tissue, designed for specific computational tasks. They work faster and more efficiently than conventional computers for pattern recognition and rapid calculation. A Caldrith engineer in the back raised his hand. But the risks. What if these biological systems mutate or become unstable? We designed them with fail-safes, Sarah explained. Multiple redundant systems, constant monitoring, automatic shutdowns if parameters deviate. We took every precaution. And yes, there are risks. But there are risks in any new technology. The question is whether the benefits justify careful implementation. We believe they do. What about the armor? General Krathok asked. That composite you developed. Can you explain the principle without revealing the formula? The principle is actually quite simple, Sarah said. Different materials respond differently to damage. Some are good at dispersing heat. Others are good at maintaining structural integrity. Still others are good at absorbing kinetic impacts. We layered materials with complementary properties and bonded them with organic compounds that are naturally shock absorbent. The result is armor, where each layer handles specific types of damage while supporting the other layers, like medieval Earth Knights wearing chainmail under plate armor, Dr. Kivnis observed. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. Humans have been developing layered defense systems for thousands of years. We just applied those ancient principles with modern materials. Zexthal felt something click into place in his understanding. You did not invent entirely new technologies. You combined existing technologies in ways no one had tried before. Mostly, yes, Sarah agreed. Innovation is not always about creating something from nothing. Often it is about looking at existing tools and asking what happens if we use them differently or combine them in new ways. Humans are very good at that kind of lateral thinking. Why? Zexthal asked. What makes humans so good at this approach? Sarah was quiet for a moment thinking. I think it is because humans spent most of our existence with limited resources. We could not always build the perfect tool for a job. We had to improvise, adapt, make do with what we had. That cultural history shaped how we approach problems. When we reached the stars and encountered species with advanced technologies, we brought that adaptability with us. You all have technologies we could never have developed, but we can look at those technologies and think of new ways to use them. The spider silk binding compound, Zexthal said. That is a perfect example. We never thought to look at biology for engineering solutions. And we never thought not to, Sarah replied. Humans are biological beings who develop technology. We have always seen ourselves as part of nature, not separate from it. Using biological solutions in technology seems natural to us. The briefing continued for another hour, with Sarah patiently answering questions and explaining human engineering philosophy. By the end, Zexthal felt as though he had received an education in an entirely different way of thinking. As the room emptied, he approached Sarah. Chief Engineer, I owe you an apology. You don't, Sarah said firmly. You were doing your job. You had every right to be skeptical. Perhaps, Zexthal acknowledged, but I let my skepticism become contempt. I assumed you were foolish rather than considering you might know something I did not. That was arrogant. Sarah smiled warmly. Commander, skepticism is healthy. It forces us to prove our ideas work. You pushed us to document everything, to justify every choice. That made the Prometheus dawn better. So, thank you. Zexthal found himself returning the smile. Would you be willing to work with me on future projects? I believe I have much to learn from human methods. I would be honored, Sarah said. And I have much to learn from Varelian precision and attention to detail. Maybe together, we can build something even more impressive. More impressive than a ship that should be impossible? Zexthal asked dryly. Why not? Sarah replied, her eyes bright with possibility. Impossible just means no one has done it yet. 6 months had passed since the demonstration at the proving grounds, and the galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. Commander Zexthal stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Dawn, no longer as a skeptical observer, but as the second in command of what had become the flagship of the new Galactic Defense Fleet. The bridge was a blend of human design and alien functionality. The organic computing substrates that had once seemed so strange now felt natural, their rapid processing capabilities making combat decisions faster and more accurate than any quantum computer could match. Zexthal had learned to trust them, to work with them, though he still found it slightly unsettling that parts of his ship were technically alive. "Commander, we have confirmation," reported Lieutenant Williams from the sensor station. The tall human woman had become one of Zexthal's most trusted officers. Her insistence on exceeding minimum standards, something he had come to appreciate deeply. The Quathon Hegemony Fleet is holding position near the Outer Rim colonies. 18 capital ships, maybe 40 support vessels. They are not backing down. Zexthal studied the tactical display. The Quathon were a warrior species who believed might made right. For 200 years, they had raided the outer colonies, taking what they wanted and daring anyone to stop them. Previous attempts to confront them had ended badly. The Quathon had some of the most heavily armed and armored ships in the galaxy. They also had no idea what human engineering had made possible. "Status of the fleet?" Zexthal asked. "All ships report ready," answered Jackson from the pilot station. The young human had proven himself during the pirate attack and had been promoted to chief helmsman. The Vanguard, the Defiant, and the Unity are in formation, all equipped with human Virelian hybrid systems. Zexthal felt a surge of pride at that designation. Human Virelian hybrid systems. The 3 support ships in their fleet had been built using the principles learned from the Prometheus Dawn, with Virelian engineers working alongside human crews. They were not as advanced as the flagship, but they represented something new. True collaboration between species, combining human innovation with Virelian precision. Sarah Chen entered the bridge, carrying a tablet and looking as calm as ever. In 6 months, she had become something more than just the ship's chief engineer. She was an advisor, a teacher, and a friend. The Galactic Council had offered her the position of Chief of Galactic Naval Innovation, and she had accepted on the condition that she could still serve on the Prometheus Dawn for active missions. "The Quathon commander is hailing us," reported the communications officer, a crystalline ethereal named Vin Resh, who had studied under Dr. Kivnis. "He says we should turn back if we want to live." "Charming," Sarah muttered. "Put him through." The view screen shifted to show a massive Quathon warrior. His species resembled Earth's crustaceans, with a thick exoskeleton covered in battle scars and cybernetic enhancements. His claws were the size of human torsos, augmented with weapon systems. He looked at the bridge crew with what might have been contempt. "I am War Leader Kreshtal of the Quathon Hegemony," he announced, his voice like grinding rocks. "You pilot ships that do not belong to you. Human vessels, I am told. Clever tricks from a primitive species. We are not impressed by your display 6 months ago against pirates. We are warriors, not raiders. Turn back now, or we will add your wreckage to the void." Zexthal stepped forward, his forearms clasped behind his back in a posture of military formality. "I am Commander Zexthal of the Galactic Defense Fleet. These colonies are under Council protection. You are ordered to withdraw immediately." Kreshtal's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "The Council has no power here. You bring 4 ships against 18. You are outnumbered. You are outgunned. You will die." "Perhaps," Zexthal acknowledged. "But we will make it expensive for you. I wonder, War Leader, how many of your ships are you willing to lose? Because I promise you will lose some. All of them if necessary." Kreshtal replied. "We are Quathon. We do not fear death. We do not surrender. We do not retreat." "Then you will learn to do all 3 today," Sarah said quietly, stepping beside Zexthal. "I helped build this ship, War Leader. I know what it can do, and I'm telling you right now, you cannot win this fight. Please withdraw. No one needs to die today." Kreshtal focused his attention on Sarah, his augmented eyes scanning her. "You are human, the shipbuilder. I have heard of you. You think your clever engineering makes you strong, but strength is not in machines. Strength is in the warrior's spirit. You have no spirit. You are weak." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I have seen enough fighting to know that the strongest warrior is the one who prevents the battle, but if you insist on fighting, We will accommodate you. Then you will die, Kreshtal said, and the connection terminated. Zexthal turned to his crew. Battle stations. Prepare for engagement. Sarah, how do you want to handle this? Sarah pulled up the tactical display, studying the Quathon formation. They are positioned for maximum firepower concentration. Classic Quathon doctrine. Overwhelming force, no subtlety. They will come at us in a wave, trying to destroy us through sheer volume of fire. And our response? Zexthal asked. We show them what happens when overwhelming force meets superior tactics, Sarah replied. She pointed to different sections of the display. Jackson, I need you to execute evasion pattern Sigma 7. Williams, target their command ships first. Focus fire on their bridge sections. We are not here to destroy them. We are here to disable them and force surrender. The Quathon do not surrender, Rixval reminded her from the weapons station. The young Varelian had become the ship's tactical officer, his enthusiasm for human methods making him perfect for the role. They have never had a reason to surrender, Sarah corrected. We are going to give them one. The Quathon fleet began moving, 18 massive warships accelerating toward the 4 ships of the Galactic Defense Fleet. They moved in formation, a wall of armor and weapons designed to smash through any opposition. It was an impressive sight, Zexthal admitted. Terrifying, even. Here they come, Jackson reported, entering weapons range in 30 seconds. Wait for it, Sarah said calmly. Let them commit to their approach. The seconds ticked down. The Quathon ships opened fire. Dozens of weapon systems launching everything they had. Energy beams, kinetic rounds, missiles, and plasma bolts filled the space between the fleets. Now, Sarah said quietly, the Prometheus Dawn moved. It did not dodge or evade in the traditional sense. It simply was not where the weapons were. Jackson's piloting was perfection itself, the ship dancing through the incoming fire with impossible grace. The organic computing substrates predicted trajectories microseconds before the weapons fired, calculating safe paths through what appeared to be a solid wall of destruction. Behind them, the Vanguard, Defiant, and Unity followed in perfect formation, their hybrid systems allowing them to match the flagship's movements, if not its precision. Return fire, Zexthal ordered. Target their command ships. Disable, not destroy. The Prometheus Dawn's weapons spoke. Rail cannons fired at velocities that made them nearly impossible to intercept. Plasma carved precise lines through space. Each shot was calculated, targeted, perfect. The first Quathon command ship took 3 rail rounds to its bridge section. Its command deck was obliterated, but the ship itself remained intact. Its crew alive, but leaderless. The second command ship tried to evade, but the predictive targeting systems had already calculated its escape route. Plasma fire caught it mid-turn, disabling its engines and weapons in a display of surgical precision. They are concentrating fire on us, Williams reported, all 18 ships targeting the Prometheus Dawn. Let them, Sarah replied. Shields to maximum. Show them what happens when they try brute force. The Quathon fire intensified, hundreds of weapon systems firing simultaneously at a single target. It should have been enough to destroy a dozen ships. The Prometheus Dawn's shields flared brilliant white, absorbing impact after impact. And just as Sarah had explained months ago, the shields strengthened with each hit, converting the incoming energy to reinforce the defensive fields. Shield strength increasing, Williams reported, a note of satisfaction in her voice. They are actually charging our shields for us. Zexthal watched the Quathon fleet continue its assault. Watched them pour everything they had into destroying the Prometheus Dawn. He felt a moment of pity for them. They were doing exactly what their doctrine told them to do. Exactly what had worked for them for centuries. But doctrine was built on assumptions, and the humans had made those assumptions obsolete. Command ships, Zexthal ordered. Vanguard, Defiant, Unity. Split up and engage the support vessels. Disable engines and weapons. Leave life support intact. The fleet split, each ship moving to engage different sections of the Quathon formation. The Vanguard and Defiant moved like smaller versions of the Prometheus Dawn, their hybrid systems giving them speed and maneuverability the Quathon could not match. The Unity, commanded by General Krathok himself, pushed through the Quathon line with its enhanced armor, barely registering the incoming fire. The battle became a demonstration, not of destruction, but of dominance. The Galactic Defense Fleet did not overwhelm the Quathon through superior firepower. They controlled the engagement through superior tactics, superior technology, and superior understanding of what was possible. One by one, the Quathon ships were disabled, bridges destroyed or damaged, engines crippled, weapon systems offline, but hulls intact, crews alive, able to surrender rather than die. Within 20 minutes, 12 Quathon ships were drifting, helpless. The remaining 6 had formed a defensive formation around their war leader's vessel, still fighting, but with increasing desperation. "Hail Kresh-Tal again," Zex-Tal ordered. The war leader's face appeared on the view screen. His exoskeleton was cracked in several places, sparking with damaged cybernetics. Behind him, the bridge was in chaos, crew members working frantically to keep systems operational. "You have fought well, war leader," Zex-Tal said, keeping his voice respectful. "Your courage is not in question, but the battle is over. 12 of your ships are disabled. The remaining 6 cannot defeat us. I am offering you the chance to surrender with honor." "The Quathon do not surrender," Kresh-Tal growled, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "The Quathon have never faced an opponent like this before," Sarah said, stepping forward again. "War leader, there is no shame in acknowledging a superior force. Your crews are alive. Your ships can be repaired. If you continue fighting, people will die for no reason. Is that what Quathon honor demands? Pointless death?" Kresh-Tal was silent for a long moment. Behind him, Zex-Tal could see other Quathon warriors watching their leader, waiting for his decision. The war leader's mandibles worked, a sign of deep thought in his species. "You could have destroyed us," Kresh-Tal said finally. "Every ship you disabled could have been killed. Why did you not?" "Because we did not need to," Sarah replied simply. "Because the goal was not to kill Quathon warriors. The goal was to protect the colonies and show you that raiding them is no longer an option. You have seen what we can do. You have seen that your tactics and technology cannot match ours. What happens next is your choice." Then Kresh-Tal lowered his head in what might have been a bow. "We surrender. I will order my remaining ships to stand down." "Wise choice," Zex-Tal said. He gestured to Williams, who began coordinating with the other ships to take the Quathon fleet into custody. As the bridge crew worked to secure the surrendered vessels, Sarah walked over to where Zex-Tal stood by the viewport. "You handled that well," she said quietly. "I learned from the best," Zex-Tal replied. "You gave them a way to surrender with honor. That was important. Humans have learned that defeated enemies make better allies than dead ones," Sarah said. "The Quathon are warriors. They respect strength. We showed them strength. Now we offer them partnership." Dr. Kivnis materialized on the bridge in a flash of crystalline light. "The Galactic Council is sending official commendations," she announced. "This victory will reshape interstellar politics. The Quathon have never been defeated in open combat before." "It was not just our victory," Zex-Tal said, gesturing around the bridge. "Human engineering, Virillian precision, ethereal wisdom, Kaldreth strength. This is what happens when species work together. That is the real victory," Sarah agreed. "The Prometheus Dawn proved that human ideas could work. This battle proved that human ideas combined with alien knowledge create something better than either alone." 3 days later, Zex-Tal found himself in a shipyard once again, but this time as the instructor rather than the skeptic. Around him, engineers from 20 species listened as he explained the principles of human-inspired iterative engineering. Sarah stood beside him, occasionally adding clarifications or answering technical questions. "The most important lesson the humans taught us," Zex-Tal told the assembled engineers, "is that impossible is not a fact. It is a challenge. When someone tells you something cannot be done, what they really mean is that no one has figured out how to do it yet. The humans taught us to question our assumptions, to test rather than calculate, to embrace failure as a teacher." A young Kaldreth engineer raised his hand. "But how do we overcome our cultural fear of failure? In my species, an engineer who proposes a failed design loses all credibility." Sarah stepped forward. "You change the culture by changing how you define failure. Failure is not proposing something that does not work. Failure is not trying. When we built the Prometheus Dawn, we did not get it right the first time. We tried 17 different power core configurations. 16 did not work the way we wanted, but each one taught us something. We documented every attempt, learned from each one, and eventually found the solution. That is not failure, that is progress. But the cost? Another engineer objected. Building 17 power cores just to find one that works seems wasteful. Building 17 small-scale test cores is far less wasteful than building one full-scale core that does not work, Sarah countered. Test early, test small, test often. Learn what works before you commit to full production. That is the human way. Zextal pulled up a hologram showing various human-alien hybrid designs currently in development. We are not asking you to abandon your own species methods. We are asking you to combine them with human methods. Virillian precision and careful planning combined with human iteration and testing. Cauldrith strength and durability combined with human adaptive flexibility. Ethereal theoretical knowledge combined with human empirical testing. The future of galactic engineering is not human or alien, Dr. Kivnis added, her crystalline form pulsing with enthusiastic light. It is collaborative. It is the best of all species working together. After the lecture, as the engineers dispersed to begin their own hybrid projects, Sarah and Zextal stood together watching the construction base. New ships were taking shape, each incorporating lessons learned from the Prometheus Dawn, each representing cooperation between species. You know, Sarah said quietly, 6 months ago, you thought I was insane. I did, Zextal admitted without embarrassment. I thought you were going to build a ship that would explode the moment you activated the power core. And instead, we built something that changed the galaxy, Sarah said with a small smile. You know what the best part is? We are just getting started. The Prometheus Dawn is impressive, but it is Generation 1. Imagine what Generation 2 will look like with everything we have learned. Zextal felt a surge of excitement at the thought. 6 months ago, the idea would have filled him with dread. Now it filled him with possibility. What are you thinking? What improvements? Well, Sarah said, pulling out her tablet and bringing up some preliminary sketches. We have been working on a few ideas. What if we combine the organic computing substrates with ethereal quantum consciousness frameworks? Dr. Kivnis thinks we might be able to create ship systems that are not just fast, but actually predictive. They would not just react to threats. They would anticipate them before they happen. That sounds impossible, Zextal said, then caught himself. Which means it is probably exactly what we should try. Sarah laughed. Now you are thinking like a human. We have also been working with some Caldrath geologists on a new armor compound. They showed us some crystalline structures from their homeworld that can store and release energy. We think we might be able to create armor that does not just absorb hits, but actually fires the energy back at attackers. Reactive armor that weaponizes incoming fire, Zextal mused. The Kathon would have loved that. Or hated it. Both probably. Speaking of the Kathon, Sarah said, Kreshtal has been asking questions about our engineering methods. I think he wants to learn. Can you imagine Kathon warriors applying their discipline and courage to scientific innovation instead of just warfare? That would be remarkable. Zextal agreed. They have such focus and determination. If they channel that into engineering, he trailed off, imagining the possibilities. A chime from Sarah's tablet interrupted their conversation. She glanced at it and smiled. Message from Earth. They are sending a new group of engineers to help with the training program. 20 specialists in different fields. Oh, and they are bringing something called pizza. Apparently it is a human food they think the galaxy needs to experience. After everything else humans have introduced to us, I'm almost afraid to ask what pizza is, Zextal said dryly. It is bread with cheese and toppings, Sarah explained. Simple, adaptable, and somehow greater than the sum of its parts. Kind of like human engineering, actually. Zextal's communicator beeped. He checked it and saw a message from Admiral Thexval. The Admiral wants to see us. He says it is important. They made their way to the Admiral's office, a spacious room with windows overlooking the shipyards. Thexval stood at the window, his scales showing the gold tint of satisfaction. Beside him stood War Leader Kreshtal, looking somewhat uncomfortable but determined. Chief Engineer Chen, Commander Zextal, Thexval greeted them. Thank you for coming. War Leader Kreshtal has a proposal I believe you should hear. Kreshtal stepped forward, his damaged cybernetics still sparking occasionally. I have spoken with my people. The Kathon hegemony wishes to join the Galactic Council formally. We also wish to contribute to the defense fleet. Sarah and Zextal exchanged surprised glances. That is wonderful news, Sarah said carefully. What kind of contribution did you have in mind? We are warriors, Kreshtal said simply. We know combat. We know tactics. We know how to fight and how to survive. But you showed us we do not know everything about warfare. You have technology and methods we never imagined. We wish to learn. In exchange, we offer our warriors as crew members for your ships and our knowledge of combat to improve your tactics. You want Kathon warriors serving on human-designed ships? Zexthal asked, making sure he understood correctly. Yes, Kreshtal confirmed. Our defeat was not shameful. It was educational. You showed us there is more to strength than armor and weapons. There is innovation, adaptation. We wish to learn these things, and we wish to prove that the Kathon can be allies as fierce as we were enemies. Admiral Thexval spoke up. I have already discussed this with the Council. They are enthusiastic about the proposal. The Kathon have been isolated for too long. Bringing them into the galactic community could change everything. But I wanted your opinions first, since you would be working with them directly. Sarah looked at Kreshtal thoughtfully. War Leader, I have one question. Why do you want this, really? Kreshtal was quiet for a moment, his mandibles working. Because you showed me something I never believed possible. You showed me that there are warriors who fight not to destroy, but to protect. You could have killed my entire fleet, every warrior, every crew member. Instead, you disabled our ships and offered surrender with honor. That is a kind of strength I never understood before. I want my people to learn that strength. Then welcome to the team, Sarah said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Kreshtal looked at the small hand, then carefully wrapped one claw around it, gentle, despite his size. We will not disappoint you, Kreshtal said solemnly. After the war leader left, Thexval turned to Sarah and Zexthal. You realize what this means? If the Kathon join the Council and contribute to the defense fleet, other species will follow. The Prometheus Dawn did not just win a battle. It started a movement. A movement toward what? Zexthal asked. Toward cooperation, Thexval replied. Toward combining the best of every species. Toward a galaxy where we learn from each other instead of fearing each other. The humans brought us more than new technology. They brought us a new way of thinking. Sarah shook her head. With respect, Admiral, we did not bring you anything you did not already have. Every species in this galaxy has innovation and creativity. We just approach problems differently because we had to. We were the newcomers, the species without centuries of established methods. That gave us freedom to try things others had decided were impossible. Perhaps, Thexval acknowledged. But you showed us that our established methods were limits we placed on ourselves. You freed us from those limits. That is a gift beyond measure. That evening, Zexthal returned to his quarters on the Prometheus Dawn. The ship was in dock for minor repairs and upgrades, but it still felt like home. He sat at his desk and began writing his report for the Viridian Engineering Council, documenting everything he had learned over the past 6 months. He wrote about the power systems that should not work, but did. He wrote about the armor that combined biology and technology. He wrote about the weapons that exceeded every theoretical limit. But mostly, he wrote about the philosophy behind it all. Human engineering is not about following rules, he typed. It is about testing reality. It is not about accepting limits. It is about questioning whether those limits are real or imagined. It is not about avoiding failure. It is about learning from failure and trying again. Most importantly, it is not about one species having all the answers. It is about combining knowledge from many species to find solutions no one could discover alone. He paused, thinking about everything that had changed. 6 months ago, he had been so certain of what was possible and what was not. He had built his entire career on that certainty. The humans had shattered it, and at first, he had resented them for it. Now he was grateful. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Sarah entered carrying a flat box that smelled interesting. Thought you might want to try this famous pizza I mentioned. Consider it a cultural exchange. Zextal looked at the flat bread covered in cheese and various toppings. It did not look like much. Then again, the Prometheus Dawn's first blueprints had not looked like much either. And look how that had turned out. Why not? He said, taking a slice. He bit into it carefully, and his eyes widened. The combination of flavors should not work together. The bread, cheese, sauce, and toppings were all different textures and tastes. Yet somehow they combined into something delicious. It is good, he admitted. It should not work, but it does. Sarah grinned. Kind of like our ship. Kind of like our whole approach to engineering. Take different things that should not go together, combine them the right way, and create something better than the individual parts. Is everything a metaphor with humans? Zextal asked, taking another slice. Pretty much, Sarah confirmed, sitting down across from him. We like our lessons to be tasty. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, eating pizza and watching through the viewport as work crews moved around the docked ship. New engineers from a dozen different species were learning human methods and teaching their own in return. It was exactly what the galaxy needed, Zextal thought. Not one species dominating, but all species contributing. What do you think happens next? Sarah asked. After the Prometheus Dawn, after the Kathon joining us, after everything changes. Zextal considered the question. I think we build more impossible things, he said finally. I think we keep learning, keep testing, keep pushing boundaries. I think we show the galaxy that impossible just means we have not figured it out yet. That sounds very human of you, Sarah observed with a smile. Good, Zextal replied. Humans showed us that thinking differently is not a weakness. It is a strength. I am proud to think like a human while still being Viridian. That is what collaboration means. To collaboration then, Sarah said, raising her slice of pizza like a toast. To collaboration, Zextal agreed, touching his slice to hers. And to building impossible things together. Outside the viewport, the stars gleamed in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there were more challenges, more problems that seemed impossible. But Zextal no longer feared them. He had learned the most important lesson the humans had to teach. Impossible was just another word for not yet achieved. The Prometheus Dawn had been the first impossible ship. It would not be the last. And that thought, which 6 months ago would have terrified him, now filled Commander Zextal with excitement for whatever the future would bring. The age of impossible had ended. The age of not yet achieved had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.